Carousels. I bet it's been a while since you thought about those. The classic childhood relic, a symbol of simpler times filled with simple pleasures. But what if I told you that these innocuous playthings got their origins in war? That their history is one filled with deviants and golden ages, immigrants and master craftsmen. And that the same techniques used to craft and preserve carousels are the same used by fine artists and museums. This is the story of one of America's favorite amusement rides. I'm Taylor Caraway, and this is the art of carousels. This is Todd. He's one of the last carousel carvers in America. We visited him in his shop in Marion, Ohio. He fell into this business by accident. Originally, he was just a general woodworker, but a local carousel operator asked for his help to restore an old carousel, and he jumped at the opportunity. It was the late 1980s, and by then, most carousels were fabricated out of fiberglass, but this wasn't always the case. To understand carousels, we have to go back in time to ancient Byzantium. Maybe the music is like... The site of modern-day Istanbul, the birthplace of the fork, grenades, hospitals, flamethrowers, and of course, our carousels. In the 6th century Byzantium, carousels were a simple contraption, typically baskets tied to poles on a platform that spun. It was devised originally as a military training exercise and a way for soldiers to practice without fatiguing their horses. By the 18th century, carousels had evolved from their military origin to an amusement ride, traveling the fairgrounds of Europe. Their popularity made the jump to America in the late 19th century, which, paired with the influx of Jewish immigrant woodworkers trained in the delicate art of Torah art carving, brought on the golden age of carousels, a time when art and creativity flourished in the craft.
You know, this here when you're talking about the Coney Island style, This is the only one we have in the shop right now. This is a loof.
Oh, yeah.
But...
Wow, that's so cool. So how old is this one from the 1800s?
This one here is, probably older than 1915.
Okay.
It got mixed in with another carousel. A lot of carousels now are that way. The horses kind of went away, or animals went away, and they got replaced by this, that, or the other. These three are all going on the same carousel. But if you really look at them, you see they're very different in style of their noses and heads and manes, and the adornment on them is just very different because they're just very different styles and different manufacturers.
Is there a maker's mark on it, or how did you know?
The maker's mark is like a signature, there is very, very few carousel animals or components got marked by the manufacturer. And so you look at it like a Ford from a Chevy, 1968 Ford Mustang doesn't look like a 1968 Chevy Camaro, so you could take the badging off and you would know the difference. These kind of are the same way. These are Herschels, that's a Loof. These are Spillmans, back in the back you see some Philadelphia.
These days, carousels from the golden ages are antiques and highly prized collectibles. Many have found their way to private collections, but a few still exist in the world as active amusement rides, and even fewer new carousels are produced by hand today. This is where Todd and his team at Carousels and Carvings comes in.
You can come to kind of like they did back in the original when Prospect Park was built, and Jane's Carousel and Coney Island at the B&B, when those were all built early turn of the century, that stuff, we're probably as close to those shops as you can get, where we're building the mechanisms and all of the parts that go along with that, the cranks that make the horses go up and down, the gears that make things go around, all the way to all the decorative elements, all the facades, all the figures, all that kind of stuff, obviously the chariots, whether it's restoration or new, because we learn from restoration and apply.
I was going to say, there's no manual.
No manual, nobody left books, they didn't write books back then, on how to do it. So you learn what we know really from doing the restoration.
Wooden carousel animals begin as a single block of wood, just like a Michelangelo sculpture begins as a block of marble. From there, an artisan carves away excess wood by hand to reveal a figure beneath. After the carving process, the figure moves into a painting station where painters apply elaborate and, most importantly, protective paint layers to give the figure its well-known luster. A machine shop works in tandem to animate all the figurines, and thus a carousel is born. Todd and his team do all of this. The depth of their artistry is truly astounding. A single carousel figure, which aren't just horses anymore, can take upwards of 300 hours and many, many sets of hands to produce.
And it just grows, and turns into this, kind of standalone piece that, everybody gets to take ownership of, And
Totally.
then once we turn it over, then the kids and the adults, everybody, they take it on as their own. They have their favorite piece or their favorite, for whatever reason, color or animal, whatever it is. It goes past us. It starts its own life and out
Dream
there.
makers, really.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Very fortunate.
Coney Island, New York, once known as America's Playground. It's now an intoxicating place of sun-baked overindulgence. The rides, the boardwalk, the ice cream, and of course, the carousel. The first carousel appeared here in 1897, and at its peak there were around 40 carousels operating here simultaneously. Now, the B&B Carousel stands as a lone soldier, designed and carved by William Mangles, a renowned Golden Age carver. Todd comes to New York a few times a year to check in on the B&B Carousel, which he and his team fully restored in 2013, disassembling the entire thing and moving it to their Ohio workshop to apply more than 80 different shades of paint and installing real horsehair tails to restore this beautiful carousel to its former glory. Before the B&B Carousel stood at Coney Island, this one did. This is the Prospect Park Carousel. The Prospect Park Carousel was carved by Russian Jewish immigrant Charles Carmel in 1912, which makes it a Golden Age carousel. It was moved from Coney Island in 1957, and the change in location to Prospect Park was appropriate because Carmel actually lived near the park and spent some time studying the horses at the Prospect Park stables, which served as inspiration for his carvings. Over time, mechanical problems and deterioration forced the carousel to close from 1983 to 1987. After the Prospect Park Alliance was formed to revitalize the park, one of their first orders of business was to reopen the carousel. They raised $800,000 to restore it in its first capital restoration project. The mechanical components were repaired, 20 layers of paint were removed, and conservators worked to skillfully replicate the historic designs. The newly restored carousel opened to the public in 1990 and is stewarded by both the Prospect Park Alliance and Todd's team to this day. To learn more about this carousel, we chatted with David Rabig. He's the carousel operations manager here.
The carousel originally was built in Coney Island by a man named Charles Carmel, who had a whole workshop of artisans that would carve these horses. A lot of them were European immigrants whose expertise were carving like the ark that you would keep the Torah in. And so they used all these intricate techniques to make these horses. It was in Coney Island until 1952 when it was moved up and sort of redone as the Prospect Park Carousel that you see today.
Absolutely stunning. And so this carousel is cool because we're open to the public here, right? All of this talk of the golden age of carousels, but we can't help but wonder if maybe there's a carousel renaissance happening today. This is Sea Glass, a contemporary carousel. It stands on a 2,500 square foot pavilion and radiates light amongst the beautiful gardens at Battery Park. Unlike traditional carousels, the Sea Glass doesn't include the traditional center pole, and instead, the ride is completely operated by electric motors below the floors. We asked Claire, the principal architect at WXY Architecture, about the impetus behind the design.
One of the first ideas was to think about history. So that the New York City's aquarium, which is now in Coney Island, actually was in the Battery. And they used the foundations of Castle Clinton.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And because they were using a round military, embankment, stronghold, they decided to make round aquariums. They made these big round tanks in a round building, and that was the New York Aquarium. So we were like, oh my God, round, carousels, tanks. So you can see the storyline, right? So on the design side, though, we wanted to do a structure that wouldn't feel like a structure for a horse race. So most carousels are really, and the mechanism is supposed to feel like you're riding a galloping horse or cantering horse. So the mechanism kind of takes you through that. And so if you're riding fish, then you're kind of swiveling and moving, and you're supposed to feel weightless. So it's almost like the opposite of hurry up. It's like more zen. And so I think that's really like, we got excited about little kids and young adults and people on date night feeling like they were floating without having to put a bathing suit on.
Oh, I love it. Wow.
So that was the goal. You know, that was the experiential goal. And we wanted the fish and the light to work in the day magically as well as at night. So the building isn't a building. It's really like a Mobius strip that is supposed to feel like a nautilus shell. So it's the shell of the living thing that is those fish and lights and motion. So the idea is that it's a shell.
Wow.
And this comes to the George Seepin Opera Factory story. So you have like, the only thing we had put for the fish is we thought they should be see-through, so that you're like a liquid fish. But this is kind of unrealistic. But we had already talked to ride engineers, so we knew that the mechanism had to be below, and it was more like had to be more like a turntable ride. It had to be something that they hadn't figured out a ride for before. And Wari is so amazing that she was willing to go on a journey as a parks department and a kind of someone who's reimagining parks. Yeah, let's just invent a ride. You know, Disney does this. Like, regular people don't go invent rides.
We're so grateful. We love it. And this has been such a pleasure talking to you. Is there anything else you want to say about Sea Glass that you would like for us to cover or talk about in this? You know, this is also, I mean, so many people involved, but really, you know, I feel like one of your babies in a way, kind of out in the world.
Totally. But you know how people talk about projects? This is just its own category. Yeah. One of my favorite memories of it is, you know, we have 3 daughters, and they were really little when we were working on this, Mark and I. And finally, one of them said, "You guys, I won't even be a kid by the time you finish this project." And then I later said to them, "Yeah, but they're adults that go visit this, so you didn't lose that."
Oh my gosh, and have they been?
Yeah, oh yeah, they have.
Since its opening 10 years ago, the Carousel has attracted millions of visitors, a sure sign that the art of carousels is alive and well. We needed to see more of this for ourselves, so in July, we took a group of happy medium guests to the Prospect Park Carousel, which is available for private parties and rentals, and spent the evening enjoying the sights and the sounds. It was a magical experience, made even more magical with the knowledge that every figure has been lovingly restored by our dear old friends in Ohio. No matter where you are, we encourage you to go explore your local carousels and take a moment to appreciate the intricate details in the art of carousels. I'm Taylor Caraway. This is The Salon. Thank you so much for joining us.